Now, Sergio Perez has had his fair share of struggles in 2023, especially after the 5th race of the season in Miami, where his spirit was absolutely crushed by Verstappen's dominance, and while it was already visible that he could not keep up the pace with his teammate, nobody expected for him to be challenged for P2 by Red Bull's rivals. After suffering with a lot of inconsistency in his races, it's fair to assume that Perez is not providing Red Bull with what they want, a solid number 2 that they can always rely on when things go south with Verstappen, especially with how the other teams have started to catch up with the Austrian outlet and how 2024 might be a headache season for the team that won 3 consecutive Drivers' Championships. So after Hamilton's latest statement, as well as Horner's claims over Perez's future just before his home GP, is there something that the Mexican driver needs to fear, now that Ricciardo has been the loudest name to replace him in 2024? It's not a secret that Perez has had one of the worst seasons in his career, and paradoxically enough, he still holds on to the 2nd seat in the Drivers' Championship with a solid 39-point margin over Hamilton. However, if we're looking at the numbers and not how the entire season unfolded, we won't be able to see the whole picture that goes around Perez's performance. For example, he consistently failed to enter Q3 to the point of actually missing out on it in 5 consecutive races from Miami onwards, and made the podium only once in Austria. To top that off, Perez had a couple of DNFs and a lot of 5-second penalties in Qatar for not respecting track limits, which was considered to be a kind of amateur mistake if you look at the fact that Verstappen hasn't crossed the white line once in the desert. And the championship standings say it all. Verstappen's dominance has been clear from day one, winning races with 30 seconds of advantage, so it's only fair to assume that the only reason why Perez is still holding on to the 2nd seat is that the grid beneath him has been volatile for the majority of the season. When he experienced all of those struggles, McLaren was still not in perfect form, and Mercedes was still in the process of finding out more performance out of their cars, where Ferrari was stuck on ground zero, a process that's been happening on loop for the Maranello team ever since the new regulation era started. But in the second half of the season, one thing became evident: Red Bull's rivals came ready to fight. Obviously not for wins, and that might be something that will change in the last 4 races of the season and definitely for 2024, but the latter one is what worries the Austrian team the most. If they do not have a solid 2nd driver to rely on, then their dominance will have to be placed solely on Verstappen. A scenario that won't hurt them, but it's just not preferable for any team out there. Even in Mercedes' golden days, Hamilton always had Bottas to rely on, as the Finn managed to pick up 10 wins with the Silver Arrows from 2017 to 2021, and was always prepared to pick up the pace when Hamilton was struggling. Even though this was the case with Perez in 2021, whenever he started to threaten his teammates about a potential championship fight, it all came down to Verstappen humiliating him on the track and showing him where his place really is. After all, Perez's father Antonio has also admitted that his son's role in Red Bull was always loud and clear from the first day: be a successful number 2 driver, as there is nothing much you can do in a team that's building its car around the other driver. But should Perez actually be afraid for his future? Christian Horner has opened up about this issue and has issued a firm claim that there is no way that Perez would get sacked even if he doesn't keep up the 2nd spot in the Drivers' Championship. A statement that caused a lot of drama in the F1 world, because even Helmut Marko said that he doesn't want to speak for Perez's future before his home GP. Elaborating on this matter, Horner said, "There is no pre-mandate for Perez. We never finished 1st and 2nd in a championship. We finished 1st and 3rd a few times with Webber and Vettel, and we did last year with Max and Checo. With this car, it will be fantastic for in such a season that we've had to finish it 1st and 2nd. But there is no pre-mandate on Checo that says you have to finish 2nd or you won't be driving the car next year. That's never been discussed." Well, don't get me wrong, but the last thing I'm going to do is take Red Bull's word for granted. Even when the entire world was bashing Nick de Vries for his poor performance, Red Bull stood behind him and said that he needed some time to adapt to the harsh reality of the sport, only to fire him after his 10th race with AlphaTauri and say that a couple more races wouldn't have mattered anyway. And considering that Red Bull knows what's coming for them and for Max in Mexico, as the Dutchman is probably the most hated individual there, I cannot help but note that this diplomatic move is made to soothe the tensions if everything goes right for the Dutchman on Perez's soil. Even with Horner's strong statement about the future of Perez in Red Bull, he still didn't forget to remind everyone that Red Bull is not short on options for 2025, something that's already considered a guarantee when it comes to Perez being replaced by Ricciardo. Yet, this is where everything collides into one big clash. Red Bull is not very patient with its underperforming drivers, and if Perez knows that he's not a strong candidate for 2025, I doubt that he'll be highly motivated to show what he can do in his last season of the race. Maybe to try and keep his options alive in other teams, but nothing would compare to what he's capable of doing in Red Bull. There were some strong rumors that Perez would announce his retirement in Mexico, something that made literally no sense and was denied right away. But with how Hamilton and James Allison, the technical director of Mercedes, are expecting to perform not just in the remainder of 2023, but 2024 as well, one couldn't help but note that if Perez doesn't pick up the pace, then it's game over for him even before 2025. One good thing that goes in Perez's favour is the fact that Ricciardo, the main protagonist for his seat, is also experiencing a slump in his performance in AlphaTauri and is still recovering from the wrist injury. But with how Tsunoda and Lawson have shown that they're made from F1 material, that's exactly what Horner meant when he said that Red Bull has plenty of options for 2025 and will make sure to extract all of them before making a final decision. Now, the number one threat to Perez's future in Red Bull is Hamilton, and while Horner did deny that the Mexican will lose his seat if he loses out on this battle, we can never say that this is a definite statement from a team that used to fire its drivers after 10 or 13 bad races, which were the cases with De Vries and Gasly and AlphaTauri and Red Bull respectively. Elaborating on what is expected from Mercedes in Mexico, Hamilton has only soured Perez's future even further, as he added, "I definitely think it's always difficult to be able to say, hey, it's going to be good here, it's going to be good there. We've taken a step forward, and over these next 4 races, I can't predict which one we're going to be closer or which one we may or may not be further away. I think we were closer here last year, so hopefully we'll be a little bit closer this weekend to really put in enough. If we get the strategy right this weekend, we can really take the fight to Red Bull." Allison has echoed Hamilton's words, as the technical director of Mercedes pointed out that the upgrades have nothing to do with the plank wear in Austin, and it was a pure setup error from their side, which gives them all of the hope that in the last 4 races on the calendar, Hamilton or Russell can get a fair shot at the race win and extend their lead in the Constructors' Championship compared to Ferrari. But that's not the only goal they have ahead, as Mercedes and Hamilton will look to recover from the painful disqualification in Austin that would have put the 7-time world champion in just a 19-point margin to Perez with a strong showing this Sunday. So, do you think that Perez's future in Red Bull is uncertain? Even though Horner has stated that the number 2 driver in Red Bull doesn't have anything to worry about. Let us know in the comments down below.